Good morning and welcome to Up to the Minute. It is July 21st. My name is Sade Campbell and I'm happy to sit in as your host today. Today I have joining me Parrish Murphy as my co-host.
Sade, how are you doing?
Awesome. Happy to have you. I'm going to kick it to you, co-host, and let everyone know how they can catch Up to the Minute if they are watching the playback.
Absolutely. We're live on the Houston Community College District Facebook page. We're also on YouTube and we're also on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and you can catch us on HCCTV at noon, 5 and 10 p.m. Monday through Friday.
Awesome. All right, we're going to get right into the show. We have an awesome lineup. July is a good month to have our Family Fun Day guests. And we have our own history expert to discuss the major causes of the war for American independence. So Dr. Kent McGaughy from the Fort Bend County Libraries, as well as being a history professor here at HCC, will be on with us. Say hello to the audience today, Dr. McGaughy.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to get right back to you later in the show, but first we are going to discuss the new Security Operations Lab at the Digital and IT Center of Excellence here at Houston Community College's West Loop campus. And on to discuss that, we have Dr. Michael Webster, who's our Associate Vice Chancellor of Workforce Instruction. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Webster.
Hey there, Sade. Nice to see you.
Hello. So last month, HCC held its ribbon cutting ceremony for the new Security Operations Center, also known as SOC, because in higher ed, we love acronyms. It gives us life. But before we go into the obvious and importance, tell us a little bit about the event itself, the ribbon cutting.
Yeah, this event has been long in the making. We had designed this, our great faculty at the DITCOE, there's your acronym, and the dean putting this together. So we brought out a wide swath of industry representatives. As you can imagine, cybersecurity is a universal need across all industries. So there was a lot of interest and a lot of buzz around what we were up to. So this was the unveiling of the new center, and it was a great event.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about, I think people have a little bit of context around cybersecurity, why it's important, why we keep getting spammers. But tell us how this world-class cybersecurity training ground at West Loop came to be and why it's so important.
Well, actually, it started as an idea within the Center of Excellence. The faculty and the staff came together and said, hey, we really need a simulation space for our students in the cybersecurity program that's top-notch. We had a $650,000 grant from the state that came out last year. So we were able to pick up a lot of equipment to outfit the center. And I apologize. You probably hear the sirens in the background down in Midtown here, but that's an issue as well, right? Security. So we're on it.
Awesome. And, you know, what you brought up is around privacy and how much of a risk it is. We, you know, in the news, I'm not sure if someone else heard about it, but there was a school, longstanding HBCU, who recently had to close after a cyber attack and not being able to get access to their systems to enroll students. And that really led to their detriment. But there's such a need for critical workers. Tell us a little bit about how much of a need there is with such a great risk to privacy.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it on the nose. Every day there's attacks happening. In fact, if you go to the center, the new center, they have monitors that are showing you up to the minute, up to the second attacks that are happening, and it's in the millions on a daily basis. So in the U.S., we need about 700,000 cybersecurity workers right now. And just to put that in context, I mean, think of Boston. Boston, the population is 695,000. They don't even have enough people in their city to fill out the need we have across the nation. In Texas, there's about 83,000 jobs. And then in Houston alone, I mean, we're not necessarily known as a IT hub like Austin, but we still have 9,000 openings in the Houston area for cybersecurity.
That is quite the analogy to illustrate the real gap that we have in a field that is growing astronomically. And you talked a little bit about how they can see all of the attacks on the screen. And I think when people hear simulation, they don't realize that this is really giving them that real world experience. So tell us a little bit more about the simulations and how the new center will address the cybersecurity needs.
Yeah, so when you go into the center, it is surrounded by monitors all around. There's two large TVs that are also monitoring worldwide attacks. Students are engaged directly into that system and picking up on those attacks. And typically, those attacks are very similar across any platform. So the students are going to specifically target those type of attacks and figure out how they can mitigate them across the simulated platform. And then in terms of the equipment that's in the space, we've got the more and more you'll find your cars are reliant on electronics and computers. I mean, even the ability to press your brakes is ran off the computer. So imagine driving down the road and your brakes fail because somebody has hacked into the system. We actually have a unit on site here at the SOC that helps students analyze a car and see what's going on. In addition to that, we have a process operation and waterworks operation station where students can use their skills to practice simulation on if a plant is disrupted by a hack. It's an amazing facility. I would say it's top notch across the nation in what I've seen myself.
Awesome. And it sounds like it is really preparing students to quickly enter the workforce. So how many students do we have seeking degrees and certificates in cybersecurity, and what are their academic options and workforce options?
Yeah, so we have about 500 students that are pursuing, degrees, and then additional 200, and then 200 of those are pursuing certificates. There's a fast track program even. So if you want to just get your toe in the water in cybersecurity, we have a fast track program and a lot of scholarship dollars to pay for that. There's no way you're not going to find a job, even if you take that fast track program, and a good paying job at that, because the need is so high right now. As I said, 9,000 in the region right now in job openings. We're training 500. We could train 9,000 and hopefully that would fill the jobs, but they're going to continue to grow as we are more and more reliant on technology.
And you talked about industries that people don't even realize need cybersecurity, like your car could be hacked. But I think a lot of what people default to is probably like Homeland Security. So tell us a little bit about, are there any additional certifications or designations that someone can get after HCC to even prepare them more for the workforce?
Yeah, so HCC is designated by the National Security Agency as a center of academic excellence in cyber defense. So we've had that since 2017. And that designation covers not specific industries, it covers all industries. I mentioned automotive, but you even think about healthcare, records management, not just records management, but also, facilities. When you go into a hospital, those machines are all working off of computer technology. So, any facet of your life that has a connection to a network, you need a cybersecurity professional, and we're training them here.
Thank you so much. As always, HCC is listening to the market, listening to what students want as far as a skill set and responding to the needs, specifically with our latest program here with cybersecurity. We thank you, Dr. Webster, for coming on to the show to help people learn more about the program and the opportunities. Dr. Webster is Associate Vice Chancellor of Workforce Instruction, and we'll have information posted after the show so you can learn more about the program and ultimately how to enroll. I'm going to kick it right over to Parrish, who is we talked about cybersecurity, but to have a conversation around a specific war. Parrish?
Absolutely, man. That's great information. Again, HCC providing recession-proof stuff. I absolutely love it. Today, we have the pleasure of having Dr. Kent McGaughy. He is the History Faculty Associate Chair and presenter at an upcoming Fort Bend County Library series on the American Revolution. Dr. Kent, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Now, we're looking forward to picking your brain about a lot of the major causes as well as the battles of the war for America's independence. But during the decade leading up to the war for American independence, efforts to tax the American colonists by Parliament got a lot of attention and it got a little out of hand. What were some of the specific causes for the angry backlash?
Well, quite often the issue when it comes to taxation is what is the government going to do with that tax revenue once it's collected? And what had occurred in the course of decades prior to the 1760s is several local merchants in the major port cities like Boston and New York and Philadelphia had established extensive networks involving black marketeering between the American colonies and the Caribbean. And this kind of trade proved to be very profitable, largely because it bypassing the tax revenue collectors. And so in the aftermath of a major war that reached global proportions, the British government had to find a way to raise significant revenue to pay for American colonial defense. And these smuggling activities were limiting the ability of the government to collect the necessary revenue to pay for these colonial defense. So what the government needed to do with that tax revenue was find a way to get the smuggling under control. And this is what begins to really cause a significant backlash from the American colonists in the major port cities.
Wow. Now, Parliament passed several acts affecting the colonists. I want to read a couple. The Stamp Act, the Townsend Duties, the Tea Act, the Intolerable Acts, which is my favorite, and the Quebec Act. Now, which of these were the most significant in provoking the war for American independence?
Well, that would depend on who you asked. Mm-hmm. If you asked John Hancock, who was a very wealthy merchant in Boston, who had extensive connections within the black marketing operations, he would say it was the Tea Act, because the most profitable commodity he could smuggle would be tea, and his suppliers were the Dutch. And so what the Tea Act did is it gave the British East India Company an exclusive monopoly to sell tea in the American colonies, which meant the tea that Hancock was handling from the Dutch would be prohibited from the American market. And that is, again, for him, that became the final straw. Now, if you were to ask George Washington, it would be the Quebec Act, because George Washington had significant interests in the Ohio River Valley, which in this time period was the most valuable real estate in the world. And Quebec, as you know, is in Canada, and it was a British colony established in the 1760s. And the Ohio Valley had traditionally been part of the territory of Virginia. What the Quebec Act did is it took the Ohio River Valley and placed it within the limits, the boundaries of Quebec, which meant then it no longer was considered part of Virginia. And that was a huge shift in what had been a long established accepted policy from the British government. And it was what made the made George Washington committed to the path of independence.
Wow, it always comes down to money, doesn't it? I have a question. Is there a particular event that doesn't get enough attention that was maybe one of the significant battles in this war for independence?
Not quite a battle in the war, but the burning of the HMS Gaspé in June of 1772. What you had was the Gaspé was a British warship that was assigned to patrol the waters off the coast of Newport, Connecticut. Newport, Rhode Island. And what happens then is it runs aground and gets stuck. A group of smugglers row out to the Gaspé and force their way on board. In the process, they shoot the British commander of the Gaspé. And then they, after having the British soldiers and crew ordered off the ship, they burn the line, completely destroying a warship. This sent shockwaves to the highest levels of the British government, and it actually raised the question at these high levels: should this be considered an act of treason? And the decision was yes, because it was considered, by attacking a warship and shooting a British military commander, that's an act of war against the British government. And what we often hear is about how the British were pushing the colonists. The burning of the HMS Gaspé is an example of some significant pushback by the American colonists, and it completely transformed the way the British government began to regard these coastal communities and these people who were, again, illicitly engaging in trade.
Wow. Now, every year we celebrate Independence Day on the 4th, but there's a case to be made that July 2nd might have been Independence Day. Can you explain that?
Yes. The way Congress operated at the time of the Declaration is very much like it operates today. Somebody has to introduce legislation, and they have to introduce a bill. And then that bill is debated, and then a vote is taken to determine what will pass. Now, at the time of the 1770s in the Continental Congress, they refer to what we think of as a bill as a motion. And so then a motion declaring independence was introduced and debated, and then it was passed on July 2nd. So what happens then is, after the motion passed Congress on July 2nd, a formal declaration of independence had to be made to announce that decision to the public. And that's what Thomas Jefferson provided with the Declaration of Independence that he wrote. What sealed the deal for July 4th over July 2nd was the fact that on the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson died. And it was at that time you had an awakening of American nationalism and the idea of one of the architects of the Declaration of Independence dying on its 50th anniversary just resonated in the American mind. And so that's what firmly planted the idea that July 4th is Independence Day, whereas, again, prior to that, it was July 2nd.
Okay. Now, George Washington fought many battles, 17 battles actually during the war for American independence. Of those battles, he won 6 clear victories, 7 clear losses, and 4 battles that were fought and they were called a draw. With this record in mind, being 6 and 7 and 4 maybes, with that record in mind, how should we evaluate his military career?
Well, he was the right man at the right time. The main struggle that Washington had was keeping his army together, because it was an all-volunteer army, and the men enlisted for 1-year tours. And when the enlistments expired, it was purely up to the individual soldier as to whether or not they would re-enlist. And this is where Washington had to give a lot of these men a reason to re-enlist. And this is where Washington will end up crafting a bond of loyalty between of the Army and himself, so that they began to re-enlist to fight along with George Washington. And that, again, plays out, as you see, in some of the battles.
Now, what was his most significant victory?
With what I just said in mind, it was two battles that were early in the war: the Battle of Trenton on December 26, 1776, and the Battle of Princeton on 3rd, 1777. What you had prior to the Battle of Trenton is Washington had a string of humiliating defeats as he is literally chased out of New York by the British. And as a result of this, desertions were increasing significantly. And for many of the other men, their enlistments expired on December 31st, 1776. They were saying as soon as their enlistments expire, they're going home. And so Washington's army was disintegrating. And so he is going to attack Trenton in the middle of the night, right after Christmas on December 26th. And he is going to score a major victory. And he will then be able to make the pitch to his men in those days, right before their enlistments expire, that we can win this, we can defeat the British. And significant numbers of men chose to re-enlist as a result. Now, what also makes the difference with the Battle of Princeton is that traditionally in military scenarios, the high-ranking officers stayed far removed from the battlefield when the battles were underway so that they would remain safe. The enlisted men and the only officers that were really on the field of battle were the sergeants. So at the Battle of Princeton, part of a group of militia began to retreat, and Washington feared that this would cause a general retreat, which would cost him the battle and possibly his army. So uncharacteristically, he rode out from his position and into the thick of battle. And he confronted the militia who were retreating and encouraged them to set up a line. And he personally began to direct the musket fire of these soldiers. And this was stunning to the enlisted men and to everyone. Commander-in-chief, let alone any high-ranking officer, to be on the battlefield in the midst of a battle was just unheard of. And then when the men fired at Washington's command, the British began to retreat. And Washington then, on horseback, he clicked his horse, leapt over the men, and called out behind him, "It's a fine day for a fox chase, my boys." And he started chasing the British who were retreating.
Wow,
and the men,
right,
yeah, and the men started cheering, and they chased after Washington and went back into battle, and the battle was won by Washington's men.
Wow, that is awesome.
And
Dr. Kent McGaughy, thank you so much. I'm sorry, we're running out of time. He is the History Faculty Associate Chair and presenter at the upcoming Fort Bend County Library Series on the American Revolution. We'll have more info on him and what he does at the end of our post. Dr. McCoy, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you. By the way, I love the bookshelf and crowded with books behind you. You look like a history teacher, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed this.
You take care. Arday, how are you? You all knowledged up? There'll be a quiz later.
you know, things you think you know until
Absolutely.
You learn from a totally different lens. I think there's a lot of context that gets left out. That supplemental education provided by libraries and events that Dr. McGaughy was promoting has a lot of opportunity. And I think that's a good segue into our news events and announcement portion here at the show. We want to kick things off to let people know there is only one more summer STEM camp, the VR Swift Camp, as a part of Houston Community's learning program. It'll be happening July 25th through the 29th. At our HCC West Loop campus. Information will be posted after the show, so you can take advantage of that.
Awesome. Also, Media Arts Student Showcase, Spring 2022. The spring compilation screening includes student projects from filmmaking, audio recording, technology, and music business programs. It happens through August the 15th on YouTube. Registration is not needed, and we'll have more info on our post after the show.
All right, moving right along, the DEI, for those who don't know, that stands for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The DEI officer, Dr. Donna Davis, has announced the 2022-2023 podcast schedule for the podcast related to DEI. They are ahead of the game. Early topics will include cross-cultural effects of assimilation, critical race theory, hate crimes and bias, and ending stereotypes and prejudice. The link will be posted after the show where you can catch playbacks of the podcast and see what is up next.
Awesome. I love her name, Dr. Donna Davis.
Dr.
Didi. Can we call her Dr. Didi?
I'll let her tell you.
Make a difference, and give a foundation donation. You can invest in Houston's future and support HCC student success by visiting the HCC Foundation page and donating what you can. There are countless examples of students who have graduated and moved on to bigger and brighter futures because of such generous support from our faculty and staff. We'll have a link in our post after the show.
And because of that support, we're able to have what's called a free degree program called Eagle Promise. It is back. Information will be posted after the show about recent high school students who may be able to earn their degree for free. And all of our students need that reminder that fall registration remains ongoing. Course options are on the schedule from online, hybrid, and in person. Go to hccs.edu/apply to learn the steps to enroll and how to get support. We want to wrap things up by letting you know what is next. So for Film Friday, we will be talking about the Emmy Award nominations, which were recently announced. And, there are always some snubs and some people who are disappointed. So Randy Ramsey of the Southwest Alternate Media Project will hash it out with our co-host Todd about those nominations. And looking ahead to next week, we will have Dr. Daniel Stagg, who is working on a grant for HCC's Open Educational Resources, which is a word or an acronym that you all may not know equals zero cost books or low cost books. So always a good thing. And it'll be Mental Health Monday, another good thing with our own Roxanne Francis returning for her regular monthly visit. We thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Up to the Minute.